The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
You can call them sequels, you can call them rehash, you can call them reboots, you can call them retellings, whatever you want to call them. Movies and television and even other things, even channels are getting the reboot. Now, this is nothing new. We've always known there have been sequels of different movies and different TV shows, things that have brought back up, and obviously the retelling of stories going back in time. So reviving a story, bringing it right back to current day, or going back to the initial start of the story of shows or TV or movies that we've already have grown to love and really appreciate. And the fact that for streaming purposes, for the movie box office, they have to keep going back to the well, or what I call the recycling bin, to go back to stories that have already been told. And because there's more to be told in a story, well, now they're literally doing it. Everything's done like that. If you're not doing that, then you're doing shows that are in a particular cinematic universe. So, I mean, I watch Power. Like right now, of the shows that I watch right now, I watched Dallas, the old Dallas series, which was Reboot in the mid-2010s. Dexter, which now has Dexter New Blood. I already have been watching Dexter New Blood right now. Power Book 2 Ghost, which is a sequel of the Power series. And then they're also going to have the new series coming up to talk about Tommy's journey. And I forget what that's called now. So you got that. I just watched Ghostbusters Afterlife this past weekend at the movie theater, which was a reboot from 2016 when they tried to do all women. And when they, going back to the original 84 and 89 series of Ghostbusters movies, the initial in 84 and the sequel in 89, and going with that. And then even remember talking to the girl at the concession counter when I was talking about the movies and mentioning about the Ghostbusters, that she forgot there was a female version of 2016, the 2016 version of the Ghostbusters. And I mentioned the fact that, that happens all the time with women. They'll do like an all-women reboot or something. And the other one was Ocean's 8, which was the reboot of Ocean's 11, which was sequeled by Ocean's 12, which was also sequeled by Ocean's 13. This is a common thing. And of course, if you can get the stars to come back, they're going to take a bigger paycheck, sure. If you're going to make the same kind of money, sure. Let's do it. That's the plan. That's what the Broadcasters Podcast is going to be about tonight. As I record this a couple days before Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. If you get to enjoy it, happy Black Friday. As all that's going on, we know that the media is going to probably be a little bit quiet, but this was a really good time to go and talk about this. What better time when you have lots of things going on in movies and television that are in that same vein? Right now, one of the most popular things on TV in terms of streaming is Cowboy Bebop. Then you have, when it comes to the movies that are coming out in the box office right now, if I'm looking at the current weekend chart for the movies, we look at, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is, as I said, a reboot of the Ghostbusters movie series. Eternals, which is a spinoff of the previous super or Avenger type group, pre-Avengers of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Clifford the Big Red Dog, which is a movie adaptation of the TV show from the 90s and 2000s. Then you got Dune, which was, readapting the 1983 classic movie. Then you got Venom. When I'm looking at just the top 10 movies right now, Venom Let There Be Carnage sequel, No Time to Die, continuous telling of the Bond cinematic universe, which is also a recircle of the original, original Sean Connery version of the James Bond character being basically retold here. Then you have, that's all there is right there. And then we have other movies that are there that have, been adapted from other things. Halloween Kills could still be in that because it's more or less in the same mix right now. Halloween rebooted. This is the sequel of the reboot. It's like, it's never ending, but it's normalized right now. And people talk about it. But when you get to the point where streaming and the box office, television and movies itself, they have to go to that. The streaming issues Peacock is very notorious for this because they're bringing back Saved by the Bell, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they're rebooting, among other things. It's all that they do. They can't help themselves. So let's get into the rundown of what's going on here on the Broadcasters Podcast tonight. As I mentioned, we're going to go into the whole issue about how Hollywood has to go and take themselves back to the recycle bin on a regular basis. You got that going on for you. I also have coming up, we're going to talk about radio and a couple of things that are being brought up by some major analysts that are talking about radio right now in terms of where radio needs to find a way to not feel like an abandoned mall in one particular metaphor that's being brought up by Sean Ross. I'll bring that up in a little bit. And also Mike McVeigh, formerly the head of Cumulus Media, that brings up the story about a view in the future into the future of radio in 8 years, coming up in the next decade. So we got that coming up for you a little bit later on. And I'll have that for you tonight here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Of course, remember the website is broadcasterspodcast.com. Just go in and renew the URL so you can go and have the website there for you to go and check out everything that you need right there. And of course, you can find the show, subscribe to it wherever you do. Please go and make sure to go and rate and review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't done so already. We'd really appreciate that. And any topics, questions, or any particular people that you think would be guests, if you think you would be a suitable guest here for the show, then feel free to reach out to me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com, or just reach out to my main website that has all the things that I work on, kingofpodcasts.com. Everything's right there. So the one thing everybody's talking about right now is Cowboy Bebop on Netflix. That's been the one thing I've been watching right now in the news. Now, I'm not a huge person that's been watching anime. I mean, I did watch a little bit. I had a best friend of mine that no longer a best friend, that, you know, he got me a little bit into it. So I did get to watch Attack on Titan, Sword Art Online, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Boruto. So, I mean, One Piece. So I have a familiarity with some of those. Inuyasha. So I got to see some of those that were going on in Toonami and Death Note and all these other ones that I've seen before. So Cowboy Bebop was necessarily one season, and they actually had a movie as well, but that's all it was. But then there was the thought process, well, let's go ahead and create a live action reboot. So Devendra Hardawar writes in Gadget, he says that Cowboy Bebop was nothing like nothing else when it premiered 20 years ago. A neo-western set in space, a noir thriller along the spectacle of martial arts action and John Woo-esque shootouts. Now, going into the story, they say it was 26 episodes in a movie. That's all they had. But Netflix already had it on their service, and they said, well, let's create a live-action Netflix adaptation. So they say that while the show was a love letter to cinema and pop culture, crafted by a Dream Team director Shinichiro Watanabe, writer Keiko Nobumoto, and composer Yoko Kanno. The Remakes is mainly in love with Cowboy Bebop, wants to remind us of the anime, so much so it replicates many of the iconic sequences shot for shot, but doesn't latch on to what made it so special. It hums the melody, but has no soul. And then he goes along and says that they brought together a talented group as a cast for the show, but it's been filled by a confounding production, which often looks like a cheap Doctor Who episode. Some sets appear to be made out of cardboard and spray paint, and nothing conveys the lived-in aesthetic the anime captured so well. Flashes of visual brilliance, but mainly comes from the digital effects and often replicates shots from the original series. So they say, where did everything go wrong? As with most nostalgia reboots, he writes, it usually comes down to the writing. So they had people that were part of Thor Ragnarok and Star Wars Rebels, and wrote also for shows like Lost and Charmed. So the credits gave hope for the show that would be much more than a copycat of the anime, but it's still instead a confusing mishmash of nostalgia worship and superfluous story additions. And so they go through the whole story of, which I don't know about, but I'll leave that there. And then he mentions Ghostbusters Afterlife. So he talks about the movie, and I'm not spoiling anything by saying all this here, what he writes, but he says that with Ghostbusters Afterlife. It starts out as an intriguing portrait of a struggling family, but eventually becomes bogged down by replicating almost every plot beat from the first Ghostbusters. It's still a fun and enjoyable film, but its reverence for the past clearly prevented it from doing truly anything new. Watching that movie and Cowboy Bebop over the weekend made me generally worried about the future of pop culture. Are we doomed to repeat the past over and over again just to appease the fans? Well, I always think of Demolition Man. You know, the movie with Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock and Wesley Snipes. It does really feel much like the way they put St. Angeles in that movie. It really does feel like that. That's what we're getting to right now. And this is also the same thing that happens when I talk about a mainstream culture, what your big corporate mainstream companies decide to do to entertain audiences. Go back to the well. That's what they're doing. But then there are the independent filmmakers, the independent creators, those that do get on the Netflix that might be from foreign outlets, or they might be independent filmmakers, showrunners, writers, screenwriters, whatever, that are creating new content, adapting from new books or books from the past or stories to adapt into something new, because they have to find some place to be creative. And the creativity really comes from the grassroots, from really organic content that goes into the mainstream and becomes popular, or it comes in and comes out. So there's the organic mainstream that, or I also like to go and call it's a viral mainstream, the counterculture, if you will, the digital counterculture. That's what creates all the new creative shit. But then there are things that the big corporate mainstream culture can do that will get us to go back and say, oh, look at that. That's cool. And they'll bring something back to life because that's all they can do. So that's the story that I got here from Engadget. Then I want to go talk about that. There have been stories where we have particular reboots and revivals on TV that have done good when you bring them back. So Entertainment Weekly did a good job of putting together 10 of the best TV reboots and revivals. So one, for instance, they talked about Battlestar Galactica in 1978 and Battlestar Galactica in 2004. Now, they called it the greatest gritty reboot and the best argument the Sci-Fi Channel ever made for itself. That the Ronald D. Moore Battlestar Galactica honored the cheesy original series, but taking it seriously. And it refracted post 9/11 paranoia through a cosmic melodrama about refugee humans and God-loving robots. And I can tell you, I never got to watch Starbuck and the whole deal with Battlestar Galactica, the new version, but you can do better in a series like that with better special effects, better looking everything. So you have that working for you without the cheesy, campy stuff that we might have liked in the 70s and 80s. So to go ahead and bring it back and serious and create a serious feeling to it, that's a different story too. And that's what happens now with some of the reboots they do now. So it makes sense of that. And I can appreciate all what they're doing there. Next, they talk about Beverly Hills 90210 and then the recreation of 90210 in 2008 and a further recreation of BH 90210 in 2019. But the new credits did get a chance to go and run the show for 5 seasons. And then they had a meta revival with the original 90210 cast playing themselves as desperate nostalgia victims. So that's one they call for. I didn't ever get to look at that myself, so I don't know. Then you have The Comeback, which was a mockumentary satire of Hollywood Variety, where Lisa Kudrow did the same role first in 2005 and comes back and does it again in 2014. Then there's Doctor Who, the original 1963 version, and then the show was Reboot in 2005, and yeah, people have really enjoyed the relaunch of the series, which has been on now 16 years. It continues to go on very well. It continues to do pretty well on BBC, and there's no signs of it slowing down or cutting off. So they found a way to bring it back and for it to continue, because why not? Now we have DuckTales that also came in. That was 1987, the original series. And then I got Reboot in 2017. Then you have Chucky that just got brought back on, which is a little more serious. Had a little taste of the campiness they might have. Then you have One Day at a Time, which is a complete reboot where you have the 1975 version which went on for 9 seasons on CBS. Then they brought it back again and created a Hispanic version of the program. So just change it to a different family, different feel to it. That was the idea of that. Then you had Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, which they did in 2003, rebooted it again with a new cast in 2018. She-Ra, Princess of Power, which was originally 1985, and they brought it back again in 2018. Twin Peaks, where you brought back Kyle MacLachlan to be Dale Cooper again. And just like that, you bring it back 27 years later, and people loved it. Like, there was a lot of people that were really back into Twin Peaks again. They wanted to bring that back. Then the X-Files, that was originally 1993, which I think lasted 5 seasons. And then they brought it back again in 2016. Same cast. Back again. And it got people talking about that as well. There's a top 10 they brought in. So we know there are certain series that might have gone away too soon, or they brought it back and they thought, oh, you know what? We want to do that again. We really love it. And so there are some times where they do things like that and the show just comes right back on. It's like, oh, okay. Well, there you go. It's fascinating to see that. So that gives you enough evidence right there to say, why not bring shows back? Listen, when David Chase decided to go and bring back The Sopranos as a prequel, we always heard they were going to do something like that. Why not? He just didn't want to go and bring it back as a TV series. But he decided to do a movie, brought it back, said, okay, we did a 2-hour movie, and then people were asking for more. Some people might have been disappointed, but for the most part, response was there. Not so much in the movie theaters because it was going up against some pretty tough competition. It was for an older audience, and for the most part, the older audience didn't want to go back to the box office yet, or back to the movie theaters. Then, now you hear stories that David Chase might go ahead and continue the story, continue to tell the story to bridge the gap between the initial start of where they went with Many Saints of Newark to present day Sopranos, to where we got to current day when Tony Soprano was brought on as the new boss. All of that. So now, that story is still going to be something that people want to watch. They're going to be interested in. Because the other thing, too, is that you'll have... It will be something of a familiar story, but they will bring in new cast members, new things you might learn, new cast members that will be brought into the mix, because they just need to go and bridge the gap. Doesn't mean they can't just change what the original intent of the story was later on. They can go ahead and do whatever they want just to keep people involved in it. Plus, get people, as always, a younger crowd, maybe, or people that did not get into the initial TV or movie, get them back into it again and see what happens. Hey, it works, especially for someone like me. When I think of Dune, I never watched the 83 version. Never had an interest to it. But I did watch this version, the one they brought out this year, and I was interested by it. And I know they're definitely going to have a sequel, and yeah, it looks interesting to me. But they've done it for so many things. Why not? I mean, and then some things that are just such huge successes. Why don't you, how can you not take away the idea that some movie studios or some TV studios say, we're going to go back to the well again. They couldn't leave Matrix well enough alone. They couldn't leave Lord of the Rings well enough alone. They had to bring them back. Star Wars, they couldn't help to bring that back. Star Wars didn't just bring back, 15, 20 years ago. They decided, no, we're going to go ahead and keep going. We're going to go ahead and spread the story out. The story of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian. We're going to go ahead and spread it out as much as we can. Disney Plus just decided to go ahead and say, no, we're going to do everything. We're going to just run the gamut. We're going to milk everything from Marvel, everything from Disney, everything from Pixar. We're going to run it dry. And they're not worried about the fact of what's going to happen after that. They're not concerned. And if that's what you want to do, that's okay. Cosmopolitan. That's normally not a magazine made for me, but they put out a good story about it as well. They talked about why there's so many film and TV remakes right now. At this time of year, you know that there's a lot of TV shows that are coming in now that are really interesting, that people are getting caught up in right now. for the holidays. It's not your normal network TV run of the mill, but it's cable and it's the streaming that are putting out shows because they know during the holiday season, people are going to be home watching television. So they're going to get the time to do that. And since they're not going to be stuck to watching on certain days and times, they're going to watch and binge as they want. That's what they want to do. So this is a time of year where the streaming services are going to go ahead and do that. Instead of, putting the show out and giving you some time to go and breathe where it has to be stretched out over a number of weeks, when you're putting it out there all at once, it doesn't matter. And, Netflix and Disney Plus or whichever, they can do that all they want. They can go ahead and spread them out as long as they want, or they can just put them all out in one shot. Daniela Scott writes about this and says, film and TV reboots are nothing new, but then nothing new is perhaps the perfect summary of the entertainment industry right now. From Sex and the City, did you realize Sex and the City is coming back as a series? They already did, 3 movie sequels after the initial series? And now they're going to do this? Gossip Girl getting a reboot? Dune, West Side Story getting a new version of it now? 50 years later? I mean, that's what they do. The question, how did Hollywood get so addicted to remakes? So there's no pinpointing where it all started. You likely remember the first time a show or film you love got remade, and probably you were overjoyed to welcome it back into your eyeballs. But over the years, these rare returning favorites seem to have turned into unwelcome house guests, showing up unannounced and refusing to leave. So we've already had remakes, we know that, and they've been increasingly, seems to be nothing else. So we had for the movie theaters this year, He's All That, which was the reworking of She's All That, for the 90s, bringing that back up. You had Guilty, the many states of Newark. Then we have Dune, West Side Story, Home Alone. Who thought of doing that again? And a Grease spinoff all on the way. Then Gossip Girl, Will and Grace, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Oliver Twist, and How I Met Your Mother have all had or are getting the remake treatment. It's amazing. And you could just, you can fantasy book what TV or movies are going to come back after a short while if you wanted to figure it out. But we've seen successes like that. People don't talk about it, but a couple of years ago when Roseanne was revived, and ABC all of a sudden was getting 16 million viewers for episodes, like all of a sudden that show just came back with a roar. And even after Roseanne was let go, they kept the Connors going because why not? They still get some kind of an audience that watches it, not close to what it was before, but hey, it still gets an audience, it still gets a pulse. We're going to keep it going. It doesn't matter. We have nothing else to put on television. So Cosmo, God, call it Cosmo. They took the Dr. Matthew Jones Film Studies Lecture at De Montfort University in Leicester. This is a UK-based Cosmo article. And he says that, quote, remake and reboot culture is not new. It's often framed as something novel and unique in our postmodern times. But there actually is a rich tradition of remakes in Western film culture that goes back to the earliest days of cinema. The interesting thing is about remakes that it isn't really they exist or are significant in number, but rather there are more of them at certain moments in history. And we're certainly in one of those moments now. So they go along to talk about the school of thought of how the remake genre is so pervasive because for the production companies, the actors and the brands involved in the film, it's a safe bet, which is exactly why they're doing this. They don't want to take risks on piloting shows that do not do well and they have to trash them. That's what's been happening more and more. Because if you look right now at how many shows are being launched and greenlit on a regular basis because of the kind of money they're putting in, because of the networks and some of the cable outlets, they have their own in-house production studios. And what they need to do now is they're not doing stuff for regular cable network or cable network TV anymore. They're not building for that. They're building for stuff that is on demand. And they know if you want something on demand, you really not might do so well if a show is new and unfamiliar. But if you have something on that people can recognize based on characters, based on the storyline, based on the title, then they'll go with that. You don't have to drum up an interest in a new concept, story, or character because there's already a ready-made audience there for the taking. You can capitalize on the connections people have already made with their favorite characters while tapping into the feeling of nostalgia we're already readily so intoxicated by. Dr. Jones goes on and says that the most secure option for studios is always going to be something we call a pre-sold property. Meaning films with pre-existing fan audiences, and what types of films have fan audiences before they are even released. Remakes, reboots, and sequels do, precisely because they're already properties familiar to audiences and which some people will feel an emotional attachment to already. This is not laziness on part of the production studios, it's just good, sound financial logic. Sure. Dr. Jones, thank you. I feel like it's like Indiana Jones here. I feel like this is Bollock. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Raiders of the Lost Ark. One of the best movies ever made, by the way. Yes, Dr. Jones. We are very comfortable up here. Yes, we are very comfortable up here. When Dr. Jones is stuck in the snake pit. Remember that? Was going after looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Anyways, then they move along and talk about Disney and the remake model. Just look at how many Disney's films are being remade at the moment. Mulan, The Jungle Book, Dumbo, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. Because remember, not too long ago, we started getting the animated movies become made into real action, live action features instead. The distributor has done this so prolifically, in fact, that many of its latest upcoming and latest projects are revivals of their own remakes. So there was the 2021 Cruella, a prequel to the 1996 101 Dalmatians, starring Glenn Close, was in itself a live-action remake of the 1996 cartoon version. For Disney, the remake model is just an obvious one. They've reportedly invested huge amounts in remakes over the last decade. It's their own projects they're reviving. They don't have to spend on buying the intellectual property rights for titles from elsewhere. But when you think about it, they're already in the market of finding content that they've already done of their own properties and creating merchandise and creating theme park rides and entertainment physically for that and doing all that. Why not? That's the other thing you got to think about. So for Disney just to go ahead and take the route and say, well, let's make the movies again. Let's just do something else with it. We don't have to just do sequels upon sequels upon sequels. We could just take something and bring it back. We got this large library. Thank you, Walt Disney, for bringing this up for us. Now we could use all of this and see what happens. That's what they're doing. And since there's no Walt or Roy Disney or anybody else in the Disney family that's willing to stop them from doing it, they're going to do it anyway. So if they want to go and do Beauty and the Beast again, they want to do Beauty and the Lady and the Tramp, they want to do whatever, they can do that. And they'll do it over and over. For the Marvel Universe, they can also always retell the stories again. They want to do another Spider-Man? Oh, we can do another Spider-Man. We've already done it 3 times. They're going to redo X-Men? Absolutely. Fantastic Four? Absolutely. Pre-Avengers? Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That's what they're going to do. And as Dr. Jones says, Dr. Jones, I can't blame them for that. I mean, it does work. We do keep going out there like sheep watching, right? I can't blame them for that. I mean, there's stuff at the movie theaters I go to, but then I have my excuse because when I go to the movie theaters, I'm just looking for something to watch. And when I find something to watch, then you know what? I'm saying to myself, oh, okay, you know what? I'm paying $20 a month. And, for what I'm getting more than what I'm paying for. And it's like they said, we'll learn that, it's just rebooting something. Ghostbusters Afterlife? Yeah, I watched all 3 movies. I saw the 84 and 89 versions. I saw the 2016 version. I paid for my movie ticket for that. Hey, no, actually, no, I had a free ticket for that. I didn't pay for that one. I forgot. That's when I kind of racked up all the points I had at that time before they had the unlimited plan. Thank you, Movie Pass, for creating that, for forcing the others to make that happen. They're really wonderful because I've enjoyed that immensely, having that option. So anyway, back to Disney. They can simply look to pre-existing projects and revamp them for a modern-day audience. A little CGI, a big-name lead, a zeitgeist soundtrack, and likely will be a big hitter. So they're flush with remakes, and they reportedly spent more than, they said €5 billion, but I'm going to say that's probably what, like $8 billion since 2010 for sequels and reboots, where others like Apple TV and Netflix aren't. They just don't have the archives to mine from. They don't have that back library. For Peacock, they can do that. For CBS, they can do that. All of them can do that kind of thing. Makes sense for them, doesn't it? While this remake trend can often feel like frustrating for viewers, one school of thought is that it actually allows filmmakers more creativity in other projects. Prequels, sequels, reboots, and remakes tend to be so secure that they can be usually reliably counted on to make up any shortfall over more risky and daring projects. And that gets the studios to take a chance on films or series that may otherwise not see the light of day. So yeah, and this is where all these people are going to think about, like even for actors, for them to get to do passion projects or concept films, they have to do the big movies that are out there to be able to do some of the films that they want to do, right? I mean, Mark Wahlberg has had to go and do all the kind of movies he's done in order to be able to do his own stuff with his own movie studio. Same thing for Tom Cruise. Just imagine. Even with Clint Eastwood, I remember back in the day, you would think that for all the big box office movies he did, he would also do the same thing where he'd have to find some of the projects he wants to do as a director and be able to get that done. They all do that. It's an entertainment catch-22. Arguably, the more Hollywood focuses on remakes, the fewer new and daring concepts will get a shot. But on the other hand, without that guaranteed money from every single time Cinderella makes an outing, you don't have the budget for anything else anyway. Now, if you can find something that is the next big thing, like Netflix has done this year with Squid Game, it's the wildly popular Korean drama that surpassed all of Netflix's previous most watched shows to set a new record. It became a cultural phenomenon, showing up almost everywhere on social media amid news stories about the show's creator having the project turned down by studios for more than a decade. Sure, it's hard to imagine now, but the argument would be that without the certainty of money coming in from sure thing projects, could studios take a gamble on a brand new concept? So there is a quid pro quo. Catch-22, as I said. You got to do something to be able to get what you want to really get done. And that makes sense, unless you can fund it yourself. And we already know we've had that kind of issue where that's been really tough to do anyway. I remember talking to the producer of the California No, the movie that came out, and I remember talking to him and saying, man, to get the kind of money and all the chasing down of potential investors to get the movie bankrolled after, and Rich has remembered this too, for those independent filmmakers, we talked about this as well. Even if you do have something crowdfunded or something else that comes out, when you think about the fact that you're trying to bring something back, you're trying to get a movie put together, and remember that was not that long ago where Veronica Mars, they tried to get a movie put together and had to crowdfund that, or Super Troopers to get that last movie they did to get that crowdfunded. Now these days, because of the demand that is required, because of the supply needed and the demand for content on all streaming services, I think, didn't Veronica Mars come back as a show or something like that, or did another movie, something like that? Those kind of projects, which used to be crowdfunded because people just had such a demand, now it's not a problem anymore because there are already existing projects that have been done. They're short things. So you bring them back now, and now there's more than enough studios that are willing to go and put a bet on it, especially when it goes to streaming, because what they need to continue to keep putting in the pipeline, they have to keep adding content in there to keep people interested. Dr. Jones reiterates, they need to be sure they can secure a profit during turbulent economic times, so they're hedging their bets by banking on familiar stories and franchises. If I were gambling tens of millions of dollars by investing in and producing a film at a time like this, I suspect I would be doing much the same. So then they ask the question, where is the remake machine heading? Remakes are here to stay as they ever were. And in fact, according to Dr. Jones, the whole thing is pretty predictably cyclical anyway. He says, quote, "We've seen many cycles over the last 100 years or so when these three types of films have all come to prominence in very large numbers simultaneously. at the start of the last decade, in the late 90s to the early 2000s. Those dates are actually really telling since it indicated Hollywood turns to remakes, sequels, and adaptations at times of major economic upheaval, such as the dot-com crash, the economic fallout of 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, and now in the middle of the economic devastation wrought by the coronavirus pandemic. Quote, in these moments, audiences find themselves with less disposable income in their pockets, and Hollywood knows that. As a result, cinema ticket sales will take a hit. As a consequence, the studio's appetite for risk collapses, and they turn to safe bets that they can guarantee will get bums on seats. And when you think about it, they were already going that direction, period, because the box office was a little bit in decline before the pandemic. So the reason as to why the box office was able to recover so well post-pandemic is because they had the fact on all those sure thing movies being pushed out and pushed into this year and to next year, because they could do that. And they were going to make their money back on that because they were already kind of playing into the fact that they needed to go and really, they were in an economic downturn. So why not do this? So they decided to go that route, and they're not wrong with that. When I look at next year and the box office anyway, the schedule still is quite interesting when you look at it. You already know I've already repeated what movies are coming out going into the new year, but let's go what's going on starting the new year and all that's coming up next. Like I said, you're going to have movies that are coming out in loads because there's a lot of movies still from 2020 and 2021 that got pushed back. That 18 months really shuffled the calendar. So now you're moving forward, and I'm looking at, there's the 355 that's coming out January 7th, and there's another movie coming out at the same time, and then January 14th, there's going to be 6 widescreen releases. One is Deep Water, one is The Man from Toronto, they got Scream coming back again, Sesame Street getting a feature film, and then you go along into January 28th, Morbius, which is some pushback, Jackass Forever, which is a pushback, Moonfall, which got pushed back, Death on the Nile, which got pushed back. It's in February. And there's much more. There's Dog, which I don't know if that was new or that got pushed back. The Batman, which got pushed into March 4th, 2022. The Downton Abbey 2 comes in March. And you look at in April, you have Easter Sunday, Sonic the Hedgehog. I look at The Bad Guys, that's also coming out. A Doctor Strange sequel on May 6th. Like, even just looking at next summer, going into the summer season of blockbusters coming up, you got Legally Blonde 3, which will come up in May. Bob's Burgers, which is adapting, it's a movie version of the TV show. John Wick 4. Top Gun Maverick, that's on Memorial Day weekend. I mean, that's just crazy. I don't know. I'm going to have to watch both of those movies the same weekend. What can I say? Then in June, Jurassic World Dominion. Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Another Blumhouse project comes out also in June. July 4th weekend. It doesn't look like they have anything necessarily ready. Minions The Rise of Gru, which got pushed back. In July, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And then that's where we are. But there's just so much more that comes up after this that's just crazy. So keep that in mind. Plus, you still got movies coming up next year that are just monster movies. When you're looking at Mission Impossible 7 in September of 2022. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2. Halloween Ends. The Flash comes out for the DC crew. Black Panther Wakanda Forever comes out November 11th. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Avatar 2. It's just so much. So much. So that's just next year. And we know there are other movies that still got to be added to the mix that did not get pushed into this year, but we're waiting on those. Because there's a lot more that have not been brought up that are going to get brought into the mix. Just keep that in mind. There's a lot there. A whole lot. Okay. There's another story I put in here about Ghostbusters Afterlife versus 2016's Reboot. I brought this story up because of the fact that when you look at where things are going with movies and saying to yourself, okay, when you decide to bring them back and then you decide to go ahead and rework the story and how it takes on. Well, Ghostbusters gives a good example of going back into the nostalgia of the movie and then just trying to go and just change it with a different cast. Listen, I understand for some people, you'll see where there's a reason where maybe some movies might not get where you decide to change the gender of the cast. When it was an all-male cast for the most part, then you change it up. Well, it doesn't work so well. I mean, I don't see anybody deciding to put all men together for Sex and the City. And I don't see anybody putting together Charlie's Angels for men. You know why? Because we don't want that. So in the same thing, we don't want men doing women roles or just recreating a movie like that. We're not looking for the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. We don't want that in a male version, do we? No. We don't want that. I'm trying to think of what other movies I can think of like that. Yeah, there's like that. And, but there are obviously exceptions to the rule. I thought Ocean's 8 was actually pretty good compared to, it was good, but it wasn't Ocean's 11 good. And that's not shooting down what they did with Ocean's 8. I thought they did a pretty good job. Because I did like that movie. The Ghostbusters one, that was just, they were trying to do something else that just didn't work. And that's also because of the comedic, because they were trying to go campy again. And they were trying to go a different route. It just didn't work. But let's bring that up. Also the same thing, we don't want a male Wonder Woman. We don't want that. Just, kind of things like that. I think about that. So if it doesn't work for one side, why do the other side? That's the point. So anyway, here's what they're saying about Ghostbusters Afterlife. So the comparisons of the largely forgotten 2016 reboot. They ask what the better movie is. This is from ScreenRant.com. So director Jason Reitman takes a return to the Ghostbusters 84 continuity. 32 years after the events of the second film, we get the daughter of Egon Spengler brings her two children to a small town in Oklahoma where they discover an undeniable connection to the original Ghostbusters' secret legacy in a narrative jam-packed with nostalgia-inducing components. It did a good job. It did a really good job. So the direct sequel ties to the first two Ghostbusters films sit in stark contrast with the franchise's attempted 2016 reboot, in which Paul Feig reimagines Ivan Reitman's classic ghost hunting team. So Paul Feig, of course, he cast Melissa McCarthy in it, which I thought was one of the better characters in the movie, to be honest, as Dr. Abigail Yates. Then you have. Now, the movie got high praise for its ambitious attempt at a wholly original franchise adaptation, which means the critics were trying to push it up. But the audience, they always know what's best. If they don't want to buy it, they don't want to go, they give it bad reviews, they don't watch it. That's the point. It still drew enough criticism for its messy story and CGI to warrant cancellation. Because there was a plan which also almost affected the Ghostbusters Afterlife reboot. Now, when I look back at that movie, well, if I go and look for what they said on Rotten Tomatoes, okay, let's look at it. Well, the 2016 Ghostbusters, it still gets, the critics gave it 74%. The audience, this is well over 100,000 viewers rating it 49%. That's bad. Woo, that's horrible. Now, of the movies that have come out so far, let's bring this up. The current Ghostbusters Afterlife, let's talk about that. Well, critics, 62%. Audience, with over 2,500 verified ratings, 95%. And I probably would have put it up there in the 90s as well. It was that good to me. A solid A rating from yours truly. Now, in this story, they say that while Ghostbusters 2016 must be praised, that's very ambitious. which he says, for its ambition to rebranding the Ghostbusters team, the story flounders with the foundation of Ghostbusters 1984 and Ghostbusters 2 to fall back. Well, it was obvious that Paul Feig and the team there that decided to put the new Ghostbusters in, they really didn't try to go too much, except for just taking the gimmick and using it without playing homage to the original. So, screenwrite, you're absolutely right on that point. But, I mean, when you just decide to think, well, we could do the same movie, we're just going to put women in it. Well, you just can't just do that. Plus, the casting, I mean, I get what they were trying to do, but, I mean, when you have... Now, I can't just go ahead and, dispute where Kristen Wiig or Melissa McCarthy, how they fit. But for me, the rest of the cast, I am not big on Kate McKinnon. I mean, for certain things, I get where she's got her gimmick of how she does things. It doesn't fit right here. And Leslie Jones did not fit at all. I don't see the appeal. And also using Chris Hemsworth in the role that he did with him also did not work either. Like, just to make him just kind of like just some errand boy. I get what they were trying to do. And the other thing, too, is that you were trying to create a movie that you thought would get more women to go to watch. But it didn't work. And that was the other part they had a problem with. Like, it just did not work right trying to go this route, because you'd think that all women cast is going to draw a female audience. But the Ghostbusters movie was a child-friendly audience. Like, you could have adults going, but kids went to go see it. Like, me at 9 years old, I went to go see Ghostbusters. It was damn good. But they didn't do the same thing here. They were trying to do something else just for their own reason. That's why. So it didn't work. And I'm not going to shoot them anything about that. Now, in the story, they also mentioned that comedy stalwarts Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig shine in their roles as estranged friends turned particle physicists, rising to meet a paranormal threat. Basically the same kind of chemistry that Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray had when they put that together. But then you also had Harold Ramis, who was just a damn comedic genius when it came to the movies he'd done. Also, one of the best directors we ever had in cinema, in my opinion. Very ironically, also directed Groundhog Day, which is a hell of a movie, which is really hard to watch because the over and over kind of thing really gets to me. But it's a very well done movie. Just saying. Okay. The cast on-screen chemistry suffered from prematurely determined criticism that the all-female cast Feig assembled was a gimmick prior to release. And the best ones directly deriving from Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones' continued banter. So it looks like they basically said Ghostbusters Afterlife was better than the 2016 reboot, which it was. And you can all take that up for argument if you like on the Thanksgiving dinner table. Okay? You can just take that for that. Okay, let's look at the movies and TV shows right now that are in the works as we speak. Well, not movies. We already talked about that, of the movies coming out, without going into what movies are being put together, of which I've seen a couple that are just pissing me off all to no end. I mean, what did I tell my brother the other day? I told him that they're going to remake Roadhouse and Jake Gyllenhaal's going to play he's going to play Dalton, Patrick Swayze's role? Really? And who's going to play Brad Wesley, the Ben Gazzara character? Like, who are you going to do to put that together? Come on. And then also remember, there's got to be times where you look at sequels that just did not need to be made. Godfather 3, Rocky 5. We all know what we're talking about. But even those movies, they're not The Godfather. But in terms of Rocky, hey, even with Rocky 5 being a bit of a dud, like, I can still watch it, but it's not that good. We know that. Even Rocky could tell you that. It was just a cash grab. But Rocky Balboa was great. Then you go on to Creed, which has been great as well. So you find a way to continue that story, and then you go for it, and that worked. And it worked very well. And Sylvester Stallone, to his credit, a great job. So here's what you got for TV going up down the line of coming back to life. We already know about Dexter, which has been fine so far. I'm into it right now. And yeah, it's okay. Original showrunner's on to it right now. And so I like it. Now, this story came back. They put this out. Oh, this was updated in May 2021. Insider.com, I put the story in there. You can look for all the links to all the stuff I'm talking about. Broadcasterspodcast.com or into the show description of every episode, just so you know that, if you didn't realize that yet. Now, we're also getting Oldish on ABC, which will be, it'll have Lawrence Fishburne and Jennifer Lewis's characters moving into a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood of LA. So the parents, so be the grandparents of Blackish, they're going to do a spinoff here and do that. They're going to remake, oh my God, they're going to remake you Bewitched? Oh boy. They didn't need to go into this. Bewitched on ABC, this is a mistake. So the show ran from 64 to 72, starring Elizabeth Montgomery as a witch, Samantha, just a different story. So it will be now an interracial family. They're going to do like what they did with Wonder Years. Interracial family with a young black single mom who is also a witch marrying a mortal. Now, okay, they did a rebate. What was it? They did the movie recreation of Bewitched, and I don't think it did that well, did it? I don't remember what Nicole Kidman and Will Ferrell. I don't think that movie did good at all, right? I'm trying to remember. Let me see if I can find this out here. Oh, sorry, yeah. Nicole Kidman, Will Ferrell, and Shirley MacLaine, who I guess played Endora, right? And as far as I know, I don't think that movie did well at all. Let me just check real quick here. So, Bewitched 2005. Let me look at the Rotten Movies talk about this. Oh, this was horrible. Oh, 24% by the critics, 28% by the audience. Oh, man. I didn't realize it was that bad. Oof. Oh, that's just embarrassing. So they're going to bring back as a TV show. And we already know Charlie's Angels. They've already done, they did a version of the TV series and it failed miserably. And then they brought back the movie, which Full Throttle was like, I watched it. It was watchable. But it was not that good. I mean, sometimes a show was just so good for its time, you just can't bring it back. Charlie's Angels, stop bringing that movie back. Okay? Look, even with me, when they brought Lucy Liu, Cameron Diaz, and Drew Barrymore together to do that version of Charlie's Angels, fine, they were campy about it. Okay, I get it. That's okay. But it's not the original Charlie's Angels, who in my art is still the best. And I can still watch those damn shows if they bring it on now. Like it's still interesting to me, and just holds up. It's still kind of campy and very a little bit cheesy, but that's okay. But I can still watch Charlie's Angels, the original. Netflix is going to reboot Conan the Barbarian. They're going to recreate that. Oh boy. So the deal's still in development. ABC's going to bring back the Jetsons. Oh, God, this is horrible. They're going to spin off. They're going to create a live action version set in the future, filmed in front of a live audience, and it'll be executive produced by Robert Zemeckis of Back to the Future fame. Oh, no, this is bad. We're going to get Jodie on Comedy Central, which is going to be a follow-off of Daria from MTV fame. So her friend Jodie, as she graduates from college and enters the working world. Oh, boy. It's just don't need this. Rugrats coming back on Nickelodeon. And the show will come back with a 26-episode reboot. Jesus. Just can't help themselves. Gossip Girl, exclusive for HBO Max, where the original cast come back in 8 years after the events of the original series, along with a new generation of New York private school teens. Jesus. Dune, the Sisterhood. Yes, the Dune movie doing so well. Let's just bring Dune back. So now, the new series will coexist with the upcoming film, according to Deadline. So the new film will portray the efforts of Paul Atreides to maintain his family's control over the planet Arrakis. And the series will focus on an enigmatic order of women, the Bene Gesserit, who will serve as trusted advisors and companions to many of the Dune universe. The series will come from director Denis Villeneuve. Grease, Rydell High. Oh my goodness. Paramount Plus. So it will reimagine the global smash hit movie with some characters you already know and a whole lot more you will soon meet. It will be set in the 50s, will take place at Rydell High, focus on the peer pressures of high school and the horrors of puberty. Jesus. Yeah, that's just fun. Clueless is coming to Peacock to create a series based on the on the movie itself. So it will focus on the character of Dion, played by Stacey Dash in the original film, after her best friend and right-hand woman mysteriously disappears. And Deadline reported that the new show is like if Mean Girls meets Riverdale meets a Lizzo music video. Disguised as a baby pink and bisexual blue-tinted, tiny glasses wearing oat milk latte and Adderall-fueled look at high school life in 2020. They're going to bring back Gremlins, The Secret of the Mogwai. Oh, my God. And Sex and the City. They're going to back again. Except this time, Kim Cattrall will not be playing Samantha in the series. So there you go. And then we already have iCarly. It already came back, and that's been very popular. Got another season of it. People really got into that. The continued story of Game of Thrones as House of the Dragon. No, this is before that. That's right. House of the Dragon, we're talking about before, prequel of Game of Thrones, which will be next year. And then another Walking Dead spinoff will also come in as well. Not just... Oh, my goodness. So, they're going to do a Walking Dead, and I forget, this is like, I guess, a continuation of Carol and Daryl. And they're going to do Tales from the Walking Dead. So, they're going to do like an anthology series. Wonderful. They're going to bring back Power Rangers. They're going to bring back Frasier. It's been a long time, but they've actually talked about this going on for a while. Jesus. Nash Bridges, which came out as a TV movie this week on USA Network. The Boondocks is coming back to HBO Max. Practical Magic will now be done on HBO Max. And it'll be a new series. It'll be a prequel. Jesus. Legends of the Hidden Temple, CW. That's also coming back. It was originally on Nickelodeon back in the 90s. And The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. They're going to bring that back too. Jesus, man. And then not just How I Met Your Mother. We're now going to get How I Met Your Father. Oh, God. This is great. Wonderful. Okay. And then there's another Designing Women. They're going to bring that back. This is ridiculous. It's out of control, all of this. Do you understand? Out of control. But they decided to do it. I mean, what are you going to do, right? No. Yeah. It's really fun. Well, anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I was going to talk about radio, but I guess I'm going to hold that off till next week. But I have it there, but I'll bring it back next week. You know, just hold it over. Because here we are. We're at the close of another Broadcasters Podcast. Thank you for listening in. I hope all of you have a very wonderful and happy and healthy Thanksgiving weekend. Enjoy. Be careful you're actually going to go shopping. Probably easier if you're going to do it online. Or just better yet, you know what? It's the same shit in all the department stores. I keep looking at it. It is the same exact gifts every year. So why even bother doing it? You know what? Make everybody happy. Grab some gift cards. Seriously, that's what I'm going to do this year. I've done it quite a bit myself, but I'm going to do that again this year. Gift cards. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Just saying. Anyway, thanks for listening in, as you always do. And remember, that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.